Welcome to the new MisfitAthletics.com and the brand spanking new post-open cycle.
Boom.
Wow.
You guys ready for this or what?
Ready to go.
I was born ready for this.
All right.
Open's over. I'm ready.
All right. So the open's over. What do I do now? What's the new cycle? Should I go to a different website? Should I stay on this website? Am I brand new to this website? Let's talk about it.
Those are all really good questions.
What do we got to
actually.
do? What would you do?
Everybody's feeling that right now, like that confusion.
What happened?
Like, my life is over. I have to restart. I quit CrossFit. No, I don't quit CrossFit. I'm back.
I'm going to
All right,
next
what
year.
do I do now? What do they do?
Biggest thing is assess your weaknesses. I mean, that's what this time of year is about, kind of figuring out where you lacked in the open and then going from there. I think there's really three avenues of that occurred. Either you weren't strong enough, you weren't in good enough shape, or your gymnastics were terrible. So it's kind of be the focus of our next cycle, fixing those things and getting better at them.
And that sort of, to me, sounds like CrossFit in general, right?
Well,
pretty much.
I mean, either
there are
you
no
can't
secrets.
right, you can't lift, you can't do gymnastics, you can't do conditioning, and you're like me. So if you can do two, you do pretty well. If you can do all three, you have a chance to make it somewhere, right?
That's true.
Eventually.
Yes.
So, what do you think about the breakdown of the post-open cycle? So let's talk about kind of what people expect to see and what you think they should, how you think they should attack it.
I mean, I look at this time of year as a way to restart the training. I mean, hopefully you had a week off between the open and now, and you had a chance to kind of decompress and digest what happened.
they ain't taking a week off, dude.
Yeah, took 48 hours off maybe.
All right.
Yeah, something like that. So it's time to get back to work. You can see things like some slow lifts coming back with the deadlift and the squat, and we got some Olympic lifts because that's typically what they test in the open. So working on getting strong again is going to be important. I think the strength stuff is something you could see either in the open next year, or, in the future where you have to get stronger. Obviously, going overhead is going to be something that occurs every single open, one way or another. Olympic lifts are going to come back. Time to clean them back up, get ourselves, kind of prepped for cycle one that's going to come after the games. So just kind of getting back in touch with some of the things we haven't done because the open was all about, focusing on those 5 weeks and what those workouts are going to be. So bringing things back to...
So staying with the first topic, the lifting, you mentioned cleaning stuff up. Is this the time of year where you start to break things down for yourself and maybe play it safer on percentages, or maybe try to reestablish new working maxes that you're going off of? Is this that time of year, or is that kind of later on? How would you approach it? Let's say lifting was my issue. I couldn't get through the squat cleans, whatever it is, right? So what do I do to attack it? Do I just say, forget it, I'm going head on into lifting and see what happens? Or do I have to reassess my lifting and then make kind of a conscious decision as to how I'm going to approach the pieces?
Well, I think a big part of the cycle is going to be getting back to the basics of how you do things right. I mean, we're going to talk about the back squats. Probably going to go back to squatting without lifting shoes on, without belts, and kind of brace our spines and squat without those fancy shoes on. Olympic lifts can be a chance to really get back and doing the full squat snatches, full cleans, things of that nature. And it is a time of year where we're far enough away from the season where if someone wants to go a little heavy, they can probably get away with it, but they'll know that when cycle one comes back up, we're going to break it back down to the parts and really clean it up, because that's going to get you to the next level or get you that next PR is fixing things.
So you wrote basically all the lifting. What's your intention for everybody?
My intention for people is to slow things down, clean them up, and then watch how, if you clean them up at a lower percentage and you just add a little bit, and then you add a little bit, and then you add a little bit, you'll find that you took these, we've got 2 8-week cycles coming up?
Yeah.
You took this 16 weeks to perfect near your 1 rep max by the time you get to the end of it. And if you are now operating under those movement patterns with that kind of weight, that's when you see the real changes. So my hope is that people swallow their pride and stick to percentages that they know are, the movements are pretty, they're quick, they're just done the way that we want them to be done. And one thing that's really cool about the new website is the movement library. So if you're struggling with this, if you're on your own, if you're coaching yourself, or you want to know how to coach these movements a little bit better, being able to reference that to your own videos is going to be a huge advantage. So, the lifts are very traditional. You guys aren't going to have to worry about anything weird, anything new. But the way that you approach them mentally in terms of trying to perfect your movement is 100% the focus here.
What's cool about that to me is that people think, oh, I'm screwed, I didn't make it to the next level this year. These guys are going to keep training, with bigger and tougher and more challenging pieces, so they're going to keep getting better than me. But that doesn't necessarily have to be the case, because their focus isn't necessarily on making sure their deadlift looks perfect. Their focus is being able to pull something, if you're either a heavy 1 rep or a lot of reps that are near perfect under competition settings, right? So somebody who is kind of resetting their fitness and starting over for the year does have the time, all the time in the world, to relearn these movements. Whereas someone who's moving on to the next level of competition, yeah, they pay attention to the way they move, but their focus might not be there as much as somebody who's hitting that reset button, which is an easy way to catch people who are ahead of you.
Yes,
definitely. Getting back to moving better is always going to lead to, if you move better, you're going to lift more weight. I mean, the better you move in those movements in terms of making sure that you're getting to the right positions and you're flexible enough and you can get there, it's going to lead to a higher PR. Like, always think about raising the ceiling, so to speak, on your PRs, but the better you move.
Yes, sir.
So as we transition into talking about conditioning, I've said it once, I'll say it again. Anybody on the internet that wants to fight me, that's fine. A high intensity conditioning program is the greatest strength accessory program ever. There's no other way to explain how CrossFitters can lift so much weight when they don't lift that much. They don't spend all of their time lifting, all of their time on accessory pieces. Being generally physically prepared to attack these things applies not only to your gymnastics, not only to your conditioning, but also to your lifting. So if you guys can clean your lifts up and you can go hard in these conditioning pieces, you're going to get way stronger. You're not going to have to worry about, should I follow this program? Should I follow that program? Should I, sprinkle a little West Side or Catalyst Athletics in? No, get in better shape, clean up your movements, and this will change. That's 100%.
It's one of the biggest mistakes people make, is trying to follow too many separate things all at once, and they interfere with one another. You don't recover and you don't get the results you're looking for. So, like Drew said, get in shape, do what we say for the lifts, and you're going to get in a lot better shape in terms of where you stand in the open next year.
I agree. And I'll leave it at that. I agree.
So let's talk a little bit about, you guys are going to see fairly traditional site with the only thing being different is you guys aren't going to have the choices. Right now, we really want to narrow our focus to, again, the lift, the conditioning, cleaning up the gymnastics from now until cycle 1. The focus on the gymnastics in the way that Seth writes it, I think, can really change how people move in those 16 weeks from the beginning to the end, where it's just part of their conditioning. That's kind of the point, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, ramp it up into it.
Yeah, and so when you're preparing for a gymnastics piece, people sometimes take the blog a little too literally, and they just think that whatever's written is all they have to do. Well, that's not really the point this time of year. So if you have handstand push-ups or muscle-ups or chest to bar or whatever is coming up for your gymnastics work, take the time above and beyond whatever warm-up is written to make sure those movements look as pretty as you can make them look before you dive into a workout. So make sure that you're actually training that good pattern, just like we talked about with lifting, with your gymnastics movements. And sometimes it's hard to do on your own. So, video and review it, or have a training partner take a look, or a coach take a look, and then go into the workout. Because there's a lot of workouts where the point of the workout is to make sure that you are moving well, but we're still going to pre-fatigue all the gymnastics. So we're still going to make a lot of days make you breathe really heavy, and then go in and do the movements that we know a lot of you can do, but we're still trying to clean them up. And then if we start to find those holes when you're fatigued in your gymnastics movement, we can then kind of assess as athletes and coaches where we have to attack as part of the chain. So if it's, the core is too weak, or whatever it is, maybe your mobility is no good, you can't pistol, whatever.
Not patient, and when you're like chest to bars or muscle up, something like that.
Absolutely. So that'll help you as kind of
look for it. I'm real patient.
Yeah, you take your time very well.
I do.
That'll help you kind of assess what it is, or what part of the movement needs to be addressed immediately. And I think we're all pretty confident that after test week, and you go through 6 weeks of training, if you're thoughtful about the way you're moving, when you retest, you'll be pleasantly surprised how much your gymnastics tests improve. So
what's the spectrum of intensity on those gymnastics pieces? It's because you have people that are going to have to take them just a little bit slower
Absolutely.
than a conditioning piece.
Yep.
But then you're also going to have people that could use that as their second conditioning piece. So
well, what's cool about gymnastics and terrible about it at the same time is if you put too much intensity or you go crazy on the piece, you fall apart. The gymnastics go away. So they can help be like a self-moderator for you. Is if you go too hard, your muscle ups fail, your toes to bar go away. You tear your hands in the chest to bar in the first round because you held on too long. Whatever it is, they'll sort of bring you back to a pace you can find. I had a conversation with someone last night who's actually, they are going to regionals, but the principle applies to them is I said, you have a little bit of time to prep for regionals and you're still worried about these gymnastics movements. So take something that's simple, like a couplet with a rowing or a chest to bar or a burpee toe to bar, something really simple. Push really hard the first time you try it and see kind of what breaks down first. If you can find that pattern as to like where you start going completely to shit, next time if you redid something like that or had a piece that's similar, you would know how to break up your sets to keep your intensity high and keep your movement really smooth. So you can play with a lot of these pieces. As you said, that there's going to be a spectrum. Absolutely. There's going to be people who can't do strict handstand push-ups that are following this that are going to be working on progression still. But there are people that probably crush handstand push-ups that'll be doing the same piece again that are going to tear this up. But maybe their focus is just worrying about making that strict handstand push-up look a little cleaner. Or maybe they can push harder on the bitch work side of things leading back to the handstand push-up to make it a little harder. So, yeah, there's a spectrum, and it's basically athlete to athlete.
I was just thinking about this yesterday when I was doing the pistol assault bike piece from the blog. I said the partner thing where, pistols aren't great. It's not a movement I'm very strong at, but, for me, I wanted to see, I can do 10 pistols. They're not very fast. So I pushed a little bit hard in the bitch work to see how hard I could go and still be able to do pistols without completely falling apart, which is kind of what this cycle is all about.
It's all about experiences. Exactly that. So yeah, you get an experience, you learn from it, you try to improve, and then you use that kind of information you get to make a better decision mid-WOD next time.
Absolutely.
So while you were talking there, I scrolled down a little bit. We definitely need to circle back to this conditioning for a second.
Okay.
It looks fucking brutal. Like very simple, very open-like, very, very possible for people to crush themselves every single day. To have that singular focus, squat clean, bar muscle up, thruster, burpee, have that singular focus where, you spend your time on your gymnastics, you spend your time on your lift. Now it's time to get to work.
What's the one thing we're afraid of people doing when they follow the blog when they're new? Typically, my answer, too much volume, right? So we take that opportunity away from them if they're actually following what we say, and we force them to work really, really hard for at least one piece. I mean, obviously lifting you work hard on, and obviously gymnastics is tough, but there are more limiting factors in those two pieces. The Metcons are written, for the most part, so that they're very straightforward and very, able to be crushed if you decide to put some work in. And I think that's a way kind of, again, to reset and get back to the basics. It is about intensity at the foundation of things.
I was going to say, what would Travis do? But don't think like that.
No.
How hard would Travis go? I think that's a better way to put it. If you dare to ask yourself that, hell, even 3 or 4 times a week.
That's true.
The changes that you're going to see are going to far outweigh any sort of extra volume or anything like that.
I mean, in conditioning pieces, again, everything else we talked about still applies. So you're still trying to move well. You're still trying to reset that. But that sort of recklessness that he has a lot of times can be valued in kind of that time where we're pushing that intensity again and really pushing our own limits. Maybe you don't ever go touch and go in normal, training through the year. But now I'm going to see how long I can hold on and really make this hurt, see how I can operate with my heart rate basically, jacked up beyond what I've ever felt before, and kind of learn from it.
That mindset turned him into what he is. I mean, we're going to refuse to believe that you can't do these touch and go, or you can't roll that fast and still do toes to bar that well. Like, he's going to push that limit, and that's why he got as good as he can. And if other people can kind of channel that mindset, they're going to see awesome results in 8 weeks, if not 16, to the entire
And he supposedly doesn't believe in mental toughness, but
he's conditioned himself to be so mentally tough he doesn't have to think about it.
Right.
It's not a thing.
So this is easier for people to wrap their head around than having to do 3 mandatory pieces and then pick 2 extra or 1 extra and figure out what's going on. It is written for you. If you put in the work for the next 8 weeks through this, your retest is going to be like, wow, why didn't I do this before the open? Why didn't I focus on these things all year long? And it will kind of change your mindset leading into the rest of the season. I mean, we have We have 360 days till the next open or whatever it is. You know what I mean? So like set your mindset right early on, beginning of your off season, and then let that carry on and learn from the experiences until next February when you get to go again. So
really quickly to wrap this up, guys, what you can expect on the new website. Post-open cycle, if you are subscribed to the plus tier, you guys are going to get in-depth explanations of either what you should do in the piece or what we were thinking in the piece, that kind of thing. You guys are going to get access to the demo video of the day. And then another thing that's really important to know is the garage cycle and the master cycle are on there. And the garage cycle is geared towards the same thing as the regular blog. We've just scaled things down a little bit in terms of volume and equipment needs. But the master's programming is prepping people for the qualifier.
Right.
It is going to be laid out so that we say what the extra work is for the qualifiers. So if you're a master's and you want to follow along, that's fantastic. You'll be able to follow, let's say it's 1, 2, and 3, and then you'll see a little line just like we just had with the extra credit in the open. It'll say extra credit for master's qualifiers. If you want to follow along and do the master's qualifier, even if you didn't go there, a lot of people do that kind of thing with, they test out regionals, they follow the regionals programming, even if they don't make it, if they were close, they try to kind of simulate that season and see how they could have done. So you guys can definitely jump into that.
Yeah. Anything else to add?
Amen. Let's do it.
This is going to be a brutal 6 to 8 weeks for people. I mean, if you're really diving back in, which some people do, some people don't, but if you really are, you need to be ready to put in work.
I think this time of year is great because people try to overanalyze the open, where I should pace, how I should go, and they just kind of forget about how to push really hard. And that's what the cycle's all about. Get back to being on the floor, like laying down, looking at the sky, wishing you were dead, because it'd be better than feeling like you are right now.
Getting back to being able to get your exercise into 90 minutes a day.
Exactly.
Imagine that. Cool. Well, I think that wraps up our post-open cycle chat. So subscribe, follow, like, all that good stuff, and I hope you're enjoying the new site. See you guys later.